Good morning and welcome to this National Assembly live broadcast. It is morning, Thursday. The date is 25th, 2021. We are glad you're watching. This broadcast is courtesy of the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. This is in collaboration with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. You can also get this live broadcast on Bunge TV as well as on the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit and KBC Channel 1 on YouTube. Here are the highlights in the order of business this morning. 2 procedural motions will be moved on the floor of the House. The first one is on the exemption of business. This is from the provisions of standing orders by the Leader of Majority. The second procedural motion is by the Chairperson Departmental Committee on Matters Communication, Information and Innovation on the extension of time for consideration of a specified petition. That notwithstanding the provisions of sections 14 subsection 3, this is of the Media Council Act, this House resolves to extend the period for the consideration of the public petition. This is for the removal of Ms. Tabitha Mutemi from the membership of the Media Council of Kenya, which was conveyed to the House. The date was on the 11th March for a period of 14 days with effect from 29th of March 2021. Also lined up for the debate is the Business Laws Amendment Bill, that is National Assembly Bill number 50 of 2020. The bill which the House will be resuming debate on is by the Leader of Majority. Honorable Tandaza Kasim will be moving a motion on the report of the committee of the whole House. This is on the Crops Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 25 of 2019. The bill is set to move to the third reading. The House will equally be resuming debate that was interrupted on the 11th of March. It's a bill by Honorable Peter Kaluma. The bill is on the law of succession, National Assembly Bill number 75 of 2019. Also lined up for debate is the Constitutional of Kenya Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 19 of 2019 by the Honorable Member for Busia County, Florence Mutua. And so is the Kenya Information and Communications Amendment Bill by Honorable Elisha Odhiambo. Other bills set for debate is the Public Finance Management Bill, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill, and the Alcoholics Drinks Control Bill by Honorable Silvanus Osoro. In this morning session, members are also expected to field questions before specified departmental committees. And the member for Sigowet, Honorable Kesengeret Koros, will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture to explain the status of Soin irrigation projects in Soin constituency. That particular question will be replied before the Committee on Agriculture and Matters Livestock. The business of the House is just about to commence, and the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Cheboy, just stepped into the chamber, and I'll now hand you over for the live broadcast. My name is Gladys Mungai. Enjoy your viewing. Good morning.
Wajumbe, tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu ambaye kwa hekima wako na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu. Twakusihi tutazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri hii yetu. Twakuomba ututeremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa, na utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi hii yetu, na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Order, members. We are slightly short of the required quorum. Therefore, I order the bell to be rung for 10 minutes.
The Speaker of the National Assembly has ordered that the House be given some more time to allow for more members to make it into the chamber. As it stands, the House lacks the requisite quorum to conduct its business this morning. Just to highlight more on the order of business this morning is the Assisted Reproductive Technology Bill, National Assembly Bill number 34 of 2019 by Honorable Millie Odhiambo. The bill by Honorable Member seeks to regulate the rights as well as obligations. This is in relation to the assisted reproductive technology. The bill by Honorable Millie aims to regulate the use of assisted reproductive technologies. This is in aiding individuals as well as couples that have challenges conceiving. This is due to the factors associated with infertility. Furthermore, the bill aims to regulate the qualifications. This is of the health practitioners who administer assisted reproductive technology. This is in order to protect recipients of the latter services. The House is also expected to resume debate on the Public Procurement Disposal Act and the Kenya Uwezo Fund, National Assembly Bill number 42 of 2019 by Honorable Kagongo Bowen. The Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill number 40 of 2019 by Honorable George Kariuki is also lined up for debate. The member for Mwatate, Honorable Andrew Mwadime, will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, could the Cabinet Secretary consider policy which will ensure the express passenger train that serves the Nairobi and Mombasa route, this is on the standard gauge railway, makes regular stops at Mtito one day, voice sessions. This is to enable passengers who normally include tourists to disembark and visit surrounding tourist areas, and hence supporting the economic activities of tourism. This is around Mtito Andei, Voi, and the adjacent areas. The Honourable Member will also be seeking to have the Cabinet Secretary explain whether there are plans to refurbish the two stations. These stations are the SGR Railway line, considering their importance in boosting the transport network and improving the economy of the region. Those particular questions will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Transport and Public Works, as well as matters housing. The member for Trans Nzoia County, Honorable Janet Nangabo, will be asking members, the Cabinet Secretary for help.
Take your seats now. We want to start business.
The quorum has now been achieved. I'll now hand over for the live broadcast.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
This seems to be the more active bit of this morning. So let's start with the ordinary questions. And therefore, we'll start with the Honorable Member for Nakuru Town East, Honorable Gikaria.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 031 of 2021, addressed to Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Education. What is the status of implementation of the recommendations contained in the report of the Inspectorate of State Corporations of March 2020 regarding alleged corruption and abuse of office by the former Vice-Chancellor of Egerton University, Professor Rose Muonya, and the management of the university? 2, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why University Council allowed the registrar in charge of academic affairs, who was on compulsory leave following the adverse finding of the Inspector of State Corporation, to resume duties? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well, that one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. And as we go to the next one, I think it would be important for me to point out that question 038, that is by the Honorable Mwadime, question 106 by Honorable Aruguru, and question 109 by Honorable Lomurukai are all deferred on their request, having satisfied myself that the request is reasonable. So we will ignore them as we arrive there and consider them deferred. So therefore, I will skip that one, go to the member for Trans Nzoia County, Honorable Janet Nagabo, who has requested in writing the Honorable David Ole Sankok, for whatever reason, to ask that question on our behalf.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question 045 of 2020 on behalf of the member for Trans Nzoia County, Honorable Janet Nangabo Wanyama, her of the famous phrase of Utamu, to ask the Cabinet Secretary of Health. 1, what is the status of implementation of the Universal Health Care program in Trans Nzoia County? 2, what measures is the ministry putting in place to ensure that appropriate criteria is established and determined to identify the vulnerable, the poor, and disadvantaged members of the society, particularly the persons with disabilities and women intended to benefit from the Universal Health Care Program? Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. That will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Health. Now let's go to the member for Sigawet Soin, Honorable Koros.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question 06 of 2021, asked to the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Livestock, and Fisheries. 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the status of soil irrigation project, contract number NIB T080 of 2015-2016 in Chebululu area of Kapkormom in Sigawet Soin constituency? My second question is, how much money has been allocated for the said project since its inception in the year 2015-2016? What amount of money has been utilized to date, and what is the planned completion date for the project? And the third, could the Cabinet Secretary explain why the contractor has been unable to complete the project in view of the fact that there has been no notable progress on the project since it was initiated 6 years ago? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. Next is the member for Homa Bay City, the Honorable Honorable Town. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me have just 1 second to. Now we are digital.
Well, you don't seem to be in the right GB.
My leader was contacting me on some small thing, not on Slay Queen, Madam Honorable Speaker, I'm sorry.
You know, there are some terms that should not go on record at all. You already have the mic, and
HBTC.
can I allow you a minute more so that you can do it happily by giving another member?
In fact, Honorable Speaker.
Or unless you want to use the one which I'm sure you are more used to.
Honorable Speaker, I'm already there.
Yeah.
Honorable Speaker, I'm asking question number 94 of 2021 to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government. Honorable Speaker, 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide statistics and names of persons who hail from Homa Bay Sub-County who have been recruited into the public service to serve as Assistant County Commissioners or Deputy County Commissioners in the last 10 years? Number 2, what plans has the government put in place to ensure that the recruitment of Assistant County Commissioners or Deputy County Commissioners reflect fairness, regional balance, equality, and gender as envisioned in the Constitution? Mr. Speaker, I'm raising this question because in the larger Homa Bay region, we've not seen a person called an ACC or a DCC. But I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, Honorable Kaluma, and you know it. You know, you will have a whole day at the committee to raise all those pertinent issues. So we can as well ask you to be patient. But the question will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security. So let's go to the member for Ntiwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Just a minute. What is out of order, Honorable? Is that Honorable Guyo Wario? What is it, Honorable Wario?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My point of order is you directed the question by Honorable Koros to the Departmental Committee of Agriculture, while NIB is under the Ministry of Water. So I think it is the Departmental of Environment and Natural Resource.
You see, there has been a lot of shifting among the departments in the ministry. You allow me a few minutes to consult fully, because actually you raise a fairly pertinent issue, because national irrigation was shifted to the Ministry of Environment, isn't it? So, Honorable Koros, would you be comfortable with that particular? I don't think it's about actually your comfort. It's about that is a place where it can be answered better. Do you have an issue with it, Honorable Koros? Because that's a fairly, you okay?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I have no problem. But then, you see, I had asked the same question, but then it was taken to the wrong
Which one?
Ministry. The same question, Mr. Speaker.
It had been taken where?
That time that it was taken to the Ministry of Environment. And then, that time NIB was under Ministry of Agriculture.
Yes.
So you see now, I think there have been a lot of problems. There you have said there have been a lot of
absolutely
problem with these institutions.
Absolutely, but well, it's in public domain that is now under the Ministry of Environment. So let's send it to the right committee. That's the Committee on Environment. That one is revised. So Committee on Environment. Okay, Member Fontiwa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to ask question number 101 of 2021 to the CS Transport Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development, and Public Works. Number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the progress of construction, including the scope of work being done on the Rodi Kopany, they were C672 and they were Center Sori roads? Number 2, Mr. Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the criteria that was used to split the construction and scope of work into two constructs? How the two firms undertaking the work now were awarded the contracts, and also provide the identity of the said firms. Lastly, number 3, but very important, Mr. Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary further state the number of local residents currently benefiting from the project, including those employed as skilled and non-skilled workers, and state how much they are being paid? Mr. Speaker, Road Ekopany, Sori Road has been a cash cow, and this time it will not happen. That's why I'm asking this question.
We will deal with them. Order, Member Fontiwa. Now, you escaped with murder when I was busy consulting something here. Now, like I told the Honorable Member for Homa Bay, anything that you have can be canvassed properly in the right committee, and therefore, I'll have to tell you that this particular one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works, and Housing, whence you will have sufficient time to prosecute your case. So let's have the member for Teso, the Honorable Muse, Teso South.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to ask question number 102 of 2021, addressed to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development, and Public Works. Roman 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the plans in place to address the deplorable state of the Machakos Amukura Nambale Road, which serves parts of Busia, Bungoma, and Kakamega counties, and is crucial in supporting the agricultural and economic activities of these counties? Roman 2, when will the ministry upgrade the road to bitumen standards? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works, and Housing. Then we have the member for Mwingi Central, Architect Gideon Muliungi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question number 103 of 2021. And the question is directed to the Cabinet Secretary for ICT, Innovation, and Youth Affairs. Number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the policy measures used to identify areas to be provided with mobile telephony networks connectivity in the country? Question number 2, could the CS provide a list of areas that have mobile connectivity provided by the leading mobile telephony service providers, including the areas with such services in Mwingi Central constituency since 2017 to date? Question number 3, could the CS confirm whether public participation was carried out in accordance with Article 46 of the Constitution in the identification of sites for construction of telephone services transmitters, indicating the total number of persons who attended and who presided over the event? Question number 4, what measures is the ministry putting in place to ensure that all areas in Mwingi Central constituency are connected with mobile telephony services by all service providers in the country? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information, and Innovation. Then we go to the member for Kinango, the Honorable Tayari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question number 107 of 2021, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Forestry. 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain how and who authorized quarry mining in Mwache Forest, despite the fact that the forest is protected and gazetted? 2, what plans are in place to ensure that urgent rehabilitation of destroyed sections of the forest is carried out? Mr. Speaker, I asked the same question the last session, but the Cabinet Secretary could not provide a reply. So this is for the second time that I'm raising this question.
Okay, that is noted, and therefore it is replied to before, it will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. And I would be happy to, who is the, I can see the chair is not in. Neither is the vice chair. So can we have a member from the committee? Because this is a question that has been asked twice. The Honorable, are you a member of that committee? Can you kindly raise it with your committee to make sure that this matter is taken very seriously now that it's being asked for the second time? I'm sure that one you can pass the information. Okay, then we go to the next question by the member for Westlands, Honorable Tim Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask question number 108 of 2021. Mr. Speaker, this question I asked last session, and it was directed to the Cabinet Secretary of Environment, but I think, Mr. Speaker, a change of function, I think it should be under Cabinet Secretary of Water and Sanitation. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of all private dams existing in every constituency, indicating whether each of the dams currently conforms to structural safety standards, the effect of each dam on the surrounding environment, and the risk mitigation mechanisms put in place by the respective dam proprietors, if any. Number two, could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of all industries in every constituency within a radius of 100 meters of residential areas, and the waste disposal mechanism and plans in place, if any? Three, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the policy measures in place to ensure existence of buffer zones between residential areas and approved industrial zones, and confirm whether regular inspections are undertaken to ensure compliance? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Farid, the Honorable Tim, what did you say is your issue with this? I find it properly going to the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Did you have an issue with that?
No, I don't have any issue, Honorable
Okay.
Speaker.
So it will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Then we go to the last one by the member for the Rakanidi County, the Honorable Beatrice Nkatha Nyaga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is number 126 of 2021, and it is directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development, and Public Works. One, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the plans the ministry has to expand the railway networks and the connectivity in the country? Two, when will the railway line be extended to the Rakanidi County to promote economic growth in the area? And if so, state the plan, timelines for the project. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
What is it, Honorable? Let me first refer to the, what is it, the Honorable member for the, not the Raka now, the Honorable Murungi? Is that Mentis South?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to make a 30 seconds remark on a question.
No, you have no.
Because,
well,
Mr.
no,
Speaker,
no, no, no,
you cannot mention Tarakanidi without Meru. So to amend that question to include Meru County, because you cannot mention Tarakanidi without referring to Meru County.
Honorable Gaduri, you know you are completely out of order. And you know the Honorable Beatrice Nkatha will not refer to that. You had an opportunity to ask your own question. But what is it, Honorable Beatrice? What is it?
Mr. Speaker, I don't represent Meru County. I represent the Rakanidi County. So that is my interest. Thank you.
I think you have been answered properly, the Honorable Member for South Menti. Now, and if you have an issue, you can ask your question because it is open. You can also do a statement, or even a petition. Now that you are a seasoned member, I'm sure you know how you can handle all that. But that one is settled, and therefore it will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works, and Housing. That marks the end of question time. So therefore, we will go to the next order.
Order number 8, procedural motion, exemption of business from the provisions of Standing Order 43.
Then what is it again, Honorable Atandi?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there's a matter that I wanted you to take note of. That last year I raised a question to the CS Treasury, and the question was not responded to. And again, this year I did the same. And it appears the answer is not forthcoming. So I really would like you to intervene and ensure that my question is responded to in the shortest time possible.
Had it been taken to the Committee on Finance?
Yes, yes, yes.
And I don't see the Chair Finance Committee. I'm not so sure I know the Vice Chair. Is there any member? I thought you were a member of that particular committee, Honorable Atandi.
No.
I thought you were.
Honorable Speaker, I'm not.
Are you a member?
No, I'm not a member of Finance Committee.
Oh, you are not?
Speaker. Yes.
You used to be when you first asked the question. Not that it is very relevant, because whether you are a member of a particular committee, your question needs to still be answered.
Yes.
But I just wanted to get from you the possible reason why it was not answered, because I know at one point in time you are a member of Finance Committee.
Honorable Speaker.
And I even know, of course, that you have some extremely good qualifications to serve in that particular committee, if at all.
Honorable Speaker, by the time I asked the question, I was already discharged from the committee. But Honorable Speaker, even last year, I had to seek for the Speaker's intervention. And again, it was not answered. So I think, Honorable Speaker, we need justice. I need justice. And the people of Kenya need justice, because the question is very, very important.
Okay. Now, allow me to consult on it. Now that you say it is an extremely important question, just like the rest of the members ask important questions, we'd want to know, and had I seen, maybe we'll ask the majority leader to follow it up with the Chair Finance and see to it that the injustice meted to Honorable Atandi is, rectified.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that makes the Honorable Atandi comfortable now. Let's proceed to we had already called out the next, the order after, so let's have the leader majority to prosecute that bit.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, thanks. We'll be looking at Honorable Atandi's issue. But allow me to move the following procedural motion, that this House orders that the business appearing under orders number 9 and 10 in today's order paper be exempted from the resolution of the House of February 10th, 2021, which is approval of the calendar of the National Assembly regular session for the 5th session 2021, being a Thursday morning, a day allocated for business not supported or sponsored by the majority party or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. Honorable Speaker, as members will be aware, we dedicated Thursday mornings specifically for processing of private members' bills, and hence, every time we have anything that's not strictly private members, we need to come to you for your permission to introduce that business, however limited it is, because we don't want to be seen to be taking advantage of private members to prosecute business that's sponsored by a party or not sponsored by a member. And if you look at the motion appearing in number 9, without anticipating what will happen, is we have an important matter to prosecute, to give this committee time to go looking into this petition. And we thought the earlier we can do it, the better. And also at number 10, we completed something on Tuesday. And if members would be agreeable, we can finish that business today so that in the afternoon we can conclude the remaining part of that business. So basically, it's I'll be asking for another like half an hour of the private members' time to prosecute business that would not ordinarily come on Thursday morning, but would have come on Thursday afternoon, purely for the convenience of the House and to expedite matters as we move on. The very fairly straightforward matter, I would want to beg to move and seek your cooperation on this matter. And I would wish to also ask the leader of the minority party to second.
Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority has said it all in this procedural motion. I just want to say I second. Thank you.
Okay, so I propose a question which is that these House orders as business appearing as order number 9 and order number 10 in the order paper this morning be exempted from resolution of the House of the 10th of February 10th, 2021, which is approval of the calendar of the National Assembly regular sessions for the 5th session 2021, being a Thursday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by a majority or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. I therefore put the question, which is that this House orders the business appearing as order number 9 and 10 in today's order paper, morning sitting, be exempted from resolution of the House of February 10th, 2021, approval of calendar of the National Assembly regular sessions for the 5th session 2021, being a Thursday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by majority or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Any as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, procedural motion. Extension of time for consideration of a specified petition.
Lead. I think this is by the
Honorable Speaker.
The Chair Committee on Communication.
Yes. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that notwithstanding the provisions of Section 14(3) of the Media Council Act, number 46 of 2013, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petition for the removal of Ms. Tabitha Muthemi from the membership of the Media Council of Kenya, which was conveyed to the House on March 11, 2021 by a further period of 14 days with effect from 29 March 2021. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 227 and Section 14, subsection 2 of the Media Council Act, you referred the aforementioned public petition to the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation for consideration. Honorable Speaker, further, pursuant to Section 14(3) of the Media Council Act 2013, you directed the committee to consider the petition within 7 days from 23rd March 2021. This implies that the consideration by the committee and the House ought to be concluded by 30th March 2021, which is next week, Honorable Speaker, on Tuesday. Honorable Speaker, considering that this is due to the increasing cases of COVID-19 in the country, the committee, in its own wisdom, resolved to request for written submissions from the relevant stakeholders, and we received submissions by Tuesday 23rd from 5 stakeholders. Honorable Speaker, that's why we are seeking for more time so that the committee can meet tomorrow and Saturday to consider the submissions from the stakeholders, and next week table a report on Tuesday, and then thereafter the House will schedule for debate. So that's why we are seeking for 14 more days, so that at least we should be able to conclude this within the 14 days. Because from the ruling that you made last week, we should conclude everything by Tuesday, and we don't have that time. That's why, Honorable Speaker, we're asking for more time, and we request the House and the members to give us this particular time so that we can complete. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to move and ask Honorable Osotsi, who is a member of the committee, to second.
Honorable Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to second what the chair of the committee has moved, and to say that the law under the Media Council Act allows the committee under Section 14, subsection 3, to have a look at the petition within 7 days. But clearly, Mr. Speaker, because of the huge public interest in this matter, we have received numerous responses from stakeholders, which clearly we could not have looked at it within the 7 days. Maybe in future, Mr. Speaker, we may need to relook at this law so that we extend this period to maybe 14 days so that the committee has enough time to look at the issues. Mr. Speaker, this is a very sensitive matter which the committee would like to really spend their quality time to scrutinize the issues and make a proper and good report for this House to look at. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, the Act also seems to suggest that the final say will be made by the Cabinet Secretary for the relevant ministry. But these are issues, loopholes that we need to consider in terms of amendment to the Act. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Okay. So then, therefore, I propose a question which is that notwithstanding the provisions of Section 14.3 of the Media Council Act, Act number 46 of 2013, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petition for the removal of Tabitha Mutemi from membership of the Media Council of Kenya, which was conveyed to the House on March 11, 2021, by a period of 14 days with effect from 29th March 2021. I put the question, which is that notwithstanding the provisions of Section 14.3 of the Media Council Act, Act number 46 of 2013, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petition for removal of Tabitha Mutemi from membership of the Media Council of Kenya, which was conveyed to the House on March 11, 2021, by a period of 14 days with effect from 29th March 2021. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 10, the Business Laws Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 50 of 2020. Second reading, question to be put.
Honorable members, having confirmed that we have the requisite quorum, I put the question, which is that the Business Laws Amendment Bill number 2, Bill National Assembly Bill number 50 of 2020. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of parliament to make amendments to various statutes to facilitate the ease of doing business in Kenya and for connected purposes.
Very well. Next order.
Order number 11, motion. Report of the Committee of the Whole House on the Crops Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 25 of 2019. Question to be put and then read that reading.
And so, therefore, I put the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee on the said report. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Now let's have the mover to move that reading. Is that the Honorable Tandaza, sorry.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Crops Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 25 of 2019, be read a third time. I also request Honorable Benjamin Tayari to second.
Okay, the Honorable Tayari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the Crops Amendment Bill raised by Honorable Tandaza to be read for the third time.
Okay. So then, therefore, I propose the question, which is that the Crops Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 25 of 2019, be now read a third time. I put the question, having confirmed that we have the requisite quorum in the House for purposes of making this decision. I therefore put the question, which is that the Crops Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 25 of 2019, be now read a third time. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. And as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
A bill for an act of Parliament to amend the Crops Act. Order number 12, the Law of Succession Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 75 of 2019. Second reading.
Now, on this one, we are resuming a debate interrupted on Thursday, February 18, 2021, the morning sitting. No, we are resuming debate which was interrupted on Thursday, 11th March 2021, morning sitting, and we have a balance of 2 hours. So, honorable members, I want to ask you, in the sense of self-responsibility, any member who had spoken, please, you will not speak on this one, and therefore indicate just in case you are given an opportunity by mistake. But in the meantime, I'm looking for the list of those members who have spoken. Yes. So I'm trying to familiarize myself. So, Honorable Mutua Barasa, who is top on the list, had already spoken on this. I'm trying to see whether the Honorable Mbui had spoken to it, because his second, you hadn't, so proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. First, Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate and thank the Honorable Peter Kaluma for coming up with a brilliant piece of legislation, because clearly this is one of the problems that this country has faced. You will recall that almost every time a wealthy individual passes on, there's always a fight, and this fight is about his wealth. And many times funerals do not take place for months on end, because there is people coming out of the woodwork claiming to be part and parcel of that individual's family. So, Mr. Speaker, what happens is most times the bodies remain in the morgue for months, but when you figure out what the problem is, it's never really the fight about the bodies. It's always about the wealth. And, Mr. Speaker, this law, the amendment, is meant to make sure that this is a problem that has been solved. Mr. Speaker, I think one of the biggest problems we face as a country is that a lot of wealthy people do not write their wills. And it is important for people to learn from what has been happening over the years, that you ensure that if you have anything that can be inherited, make sure you have put it in order, so that at the time when you are not here, the people that remain behind do not have to keep fighting over whatever it is that you had accumulated, because you work so hard for your money, and then at the time when you are not there, people fight so hard for that same money, and you end up actually, those beneficiaries that are really worthy end up losing out. Mr. Speaker, the old law, I have looked at the old law which is also in this bill, and what is intending to amend. And in the part of the definition of dependents, it says a wife or wives, or former wives or wives. Mr. Speaker, that obviously is one of the problems, because whenever people are married and then they go separate ways, it obviously means that they'll go through court process, and that marriage is terminated. So you are a former wife because there was a marriage and it was terminated. At the point of termination, Mr. Speaker, whether customary or even the ones through the Attorney General or even through church, there's a settlement that is made. And that person who you terminate your relationship with takes some share of what the proceeds that you got together when you were married. And now, if you pass on, then it means that under the old act, the person that you terminated and marriage with can still come and make a claim on whatever it is that you have accumulated after you have actually...
It's much better when you say if a person passes on, not if you pass on.
Or if a person passes on.
Yes, because...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sorry, Mr. Speaker, because I was addressing you, I can see the fear, and I will correct myself, Mr. Speaker, going forward. Mr. Speaker, there's also the definition where they say, where the deceased was a woman, her husband, if he was being maintained by her immediately prior to the date of her death. And Mr. Speaker, this is also very ambiguous, because apparently, it means when people want to prove that they were being maintained, I hear that they normally take photographs of maybe they were having a cup of tea together, sitting on a chair near each other. That means even a person who was a worker can claim to have been maintained and claim ownership and to claim that they should actually be maintained. So I do agree that the proposals that the Honorable Kaluma has brought are really, really important. First and foremost, he says the dependent should be, and this is what he defines it, as the spouse and children of the deceased, whether or not maintained by the deceased immediately prior to his death. And I think, Mr. Speaker, that makes sense, because ideally, the people that should inherit do not necessarily have to have been maintained at the time that person was alive. Because what happens is that you could have grown-up children that are independent and doing their own things. So if you say that you can only inherit because you are being maintained, then that means we disenfranchise those ones. So I think this is a very intelligent proposal, that the dependent be defined properly as a spouse and children, whether maintained or not. Mr. Speaker, the other part, the only part I'm uncomfortable with is this part where he has picked from the old law. And it says that dependent is also such of the deceased parents, step-parents, grandparents, grandchildren, stepchildren, children whom the deceased had taken into his family as his own, brothers and sisters and half-brothers, half-sisters, as were being maintained by the deceased immediately prior to his death. Mr. Speaker, I find this extremely wide. It's important that we consider it this way, and I think this is what we propose to amend, that if it is not the spouse or the children, in case, because sometimes people could die in an accident and a whole family is swept out, in case that is not, those are not the immediate dependents, then we must graduate who is next, so that there is no fight. So the next person will probably be the parents. If not the parents, maybe the siblings. But it's got to be organized in such a way that there is an order. Because when you put together all these names, then it means all of them will be fighting in court. Everybody will be making a claim. Somebody passes on, the brothers want part of their wealth, the sisters want part of their wealth, the grandparents want part of their, you know, everybody becomes a relative suddenly, Mr. Speaker. So I think it's important that we look at that part and we sort it out. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I support.
Honorable Rahim Dawood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in supporting this bill by Honorable Kaluma, but with a few exceptions where they are. Mr. Speaker, this is a very good bill in the sense that now it is saying who a dependent is. Previously, the dependent would be wife or wives or former wives. I think it should go without saying that a lot of opportunistic people have recently come out and they have wanted a share of where they have not sown. And Mr. Speaker, this goes to not just men, even women, and who have been now given out for inheritance, things which should not be going to them really. But Mr. Speaker, in as much as Honorable Kaluma has specified who is a dependent, when he goes to his section, that one is 2.
Order. Now, who is this speaking very close to the ear of the member for Ndiwa? Who is this? Yeah, sit there.
Thank you.
Now let's proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, where Honorable Kaluma has suggested that a person a person not named in this section shall not be a dependent for the purposes of this Act unless the person proves to be maintained by the deceased for a period of 2 years prior to the deceased's death. Mr. Speaker, that section is prone to abuse. Mr. Speaker, you could be supporting somebody out of goodwill, and that does not mean that person will now have a share of your property or your inheritance. So I believe, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to third reading, we need to look at that section very well. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the minority leader, deputy minority leader, in the sense that we need to graduate who is getting the dependents in the way they have contributed to the person who has passed on. Because, Mr. Speaker, you cannot have the same share for a widow and the children of the person who has passed on at the same level as half-brothers, half-sisters, or whoever it is. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to have a graduated scale on what basis are they going to be divided. Mr. Speaker, in the Islamic law, it is very, very clear who gets what. And I wish Honorable Kaluma would have, even when we go to the third reading, we can add some things which is in the Islamic law, because that one is only for the Islamic faith. But, you know, it gives a proper way how you are going to give out your succession, your inheritance. Mr. Speaker, in the end, I want to say that it is a good bill which needs a little refining, but we need to be very careful in what we pass in this House, because we may be wanting to create a fair ground, but at the end of the day, we may even disenfranchise a lot of people, because it needs to go further, because a child is a child, whether he was born by a former wife or the current wife. So a child, whether he is an adult, he or she still has a share in the inheritance. So, Mr. Speaker, if we get those clarity in the third reading, I think I would support it and ask for amendments with Honorable Kaluma. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I wish support.
Okay. Can I confirm if Honorable Charles Nguna Ngusia had spoken on this? So proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity given to me. Mr. Speaker, this is a very brief amendment, actually, which we need to make it soon as possible. And let me take this opportunity to thank Honorable Karuma for seeing it very important to bring this into the attention of the House. Mr. Speaker, in my constituency, I will recall, there are so many burial ceremonies which have actually been postponed because of this controversial issue of the law of succession. Some of the people have actually taken more than even 5 years before they get married because of these controversies. We will recall that the ownership and the control and actually the management of property is a controversial thing, Mr. Speaker. And one of the main objectives, actually, Mr. Karuma has put on this is just to avoid the opportunistic schemers who just come and claim the stake of everything that person has actually looked for, or rather has actually acquired for legally. Mr. Speaker, I am supporting this bill because actually it's going to bring clarity on how the dependents actually, or rather, it is going to define who can inherit what in a particular time for that person, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, although the bill actually lists all the dependents who can benefit, we also need to arrange it in categorical order. Who is supposed to inherit which one, first and second and third, and up to the last person who is actually supposed to inherit this. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks clarity on the definition of the dependents, but
most of the time, you will find out so many people are good Samaritan. They come, they support your, they can actually, there are so many people you support, but most of the time end up, when you die, actually claiming they are supposed to inherit. We need to come out clearly that giving a person, or rather supporting somebody when you are alive, is not an entitlement of inheritance of a property in that particular time. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this amendment, and I call the members of Parliament actually to do it. And there is nothing much, because the aim is just to avoid a situation where opportunistic schemers successfully claim a stake in people's property. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support fully. Thank you.
Very well. Since I see most of the members are to my left, let me get one to my right, the Honorable Sankok. When I come back, I'll give 2 members to my left, because there seem to be more interest to my left for reasons I cannot understand at all.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, Honorable Speaker. And if you can see, even on your left, Honorable Speaker, most of them are male. So you can now understand the interest that this bill really do attract, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Kaluma have come with a bill that is very important, and a bill that will solve a lot of problems that we have witnessed in the recent past, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, because in the process of African being civilized, they ended up being westernized instead of being civilized, Honorable Speaker, and forgotten their cultures. And trying to adapt other people's cultures, Honorable Speaker, there were bound to be a lot of problems, especially in the succession laws, Honorable Speaker, because we had a very well spelled out succession process in our own cultures and tradition, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in our tradition, you will never find somebody who is an ex-wife trying to fight for properties, Honorable Speaker, of a deceased person. In African setup, we don't talk even about the deceased, Honorable Speaker. But because we have been westernized, instead of being civilized, Honorable Speaker, here we are, and this bill will really sort out some of these issues, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, and you know, it is pathetic that it only affects the rich, those who have something to be inherited, Honorable Speaker. So people are not interested of the dead. They are not interested of the person who have passed on. They are interested with the properties of that person who have passed on. Sometimes giving a lot of problems to their families. Burials have been delayed for years, Honorable Speaker, because somebody from nowhere have just emerged and claimed to have been a dependent, Honorable Speaker. And that's why it is very important to define the word dependent, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, slave queens have slayed their way into family properties and reaped where they have not sown, Honorable Speaker, which is, Honorable Speaker, pathetic, Honorable Speaker, because there is no burial that have been postponed for our female colleagues, but for the male, it is a problem, Honorable Speaker, because of this issue of the slave queen. So, Honorable Speaker, I really do support this bill, especially in definition of dependence. But I have a little problem, and I think in the committee of the whole House.
And don't use too much of that slave. I'm not so sure if it is completely parliamentary. I'm trying to consult some linguists here. That queen which slays, I'm not so sure, but just proceed using the English that is well understood.
I'm sure, Honorable Speaker, you have understood. And I am sure you are just, no, you have understood. Honorable Speaker, I have a problem with 29(1)B, especially when it says that such dependents of the deceased should include step-parents, grandparents, grandchildren, stepchildren, children whom the deceased has taken into his family as his own, brother and sisters and half-brothers, half-sisters. I think this one will bring a lot of problem because and confusion. We need to define, because if really you are my dependent and I've taken you in while I was alive, you should appreciate for the years that I have taken care of you. Once I've gone, everything that I was giving you is gone also. And what I had remained within my family. But you can't say because I have taken you in and I've given you shelter for 10 years, I've taken care of you, I've paid your school fees for 10 years. Now that I've gone, you still insist that my wife must take over and inherit my little sympathy and my little goodwill to other family members, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there is also a definition of dependents. The wife or wives, or former wife or wives. Honorable Speaker, in the committee of the whole House, will amend. The issue of former wives does not arise here, Honorable Speaker, because I believe during marriage, when we break up in marriages, Honorable Speaker, in our traditional setup, Honorable Speaker, there is normally settlement in that particular breakup. So we still believe the settlement was enough and it took care of the many years probably you have been together. So Honorable Speaker will amend that one so that dependents will only be a wife or wives as per the date of the death. And also children, whether they were maintained or not maintained, Honorable Speaker, biological children. We also include the word biological children, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when I talk of biological children, I mean children who we have proved beyond negligible doubt that it is fathered by the said deceased person, Honorable Speaker. Because, Honorable Speaker, I will still tell you, Honorable Speaker, when you talk about the slave queens, some of them have made this one a business in which they will pretend that they are very hard to get, but only maintaining a certain season when, Honorable Speaker, they know that this is the season, Honorable Speaker. I don't want to go into very many details, Honorable Speaker, but you'll find that several people and several men are being claimed to be the fathers of one single child.
Order. What's your point of order, member for Suba North?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do not wish to interrupt 001 when he's making his very passionate. Okay, I'm told it's 011. I don't know whether it's 1 or 11. But that aside, Mr. Speaker, is it in order to mislead the House that it is only slave queen who go after property when we also have slave kings? Can it be balanced so that we can say that we are defending the marriage institution both from slave queens and slave kings, Mr. Speaker? Is it in order to be against a specific gender? The Constitution discriminates, outlaws discrimination against one gender.
Now, Honorable Member for Suba North, you see, you are bringing in the issue of slave king and slave queen, and then you are not telling us about the slave princess. So the issue here is that these are terms which are not very common. I do not know where you get them. I had asked the Honorable Sankok not to really proceed using that term because it is not recognized in the National Assembly. Now, the other one now, the slave king, is, I'm told, even not recognized at all anywhere else. So we probably need to just leave that line of, the slaying.
Honorable Speaker, you have taken a lot of my time. Well, I hope you'll add me 1 minute.
Honorable Sankok, just for your information, all the time in the House is actually mine. I'm basically donating some to you. Now, you cannot at all, and by the way, Honorable Sankok, I might deny you the time completely, including denying it completely by sending you out. So please don't repeat that again, because you will tempt me now to deny you even the sitting. So proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I do withdraw and apologize.
Yes, now that's better.
It was a slip of the tongue. I apologize.
Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, it is my time. Let me use the term slave queen. When the time for Honorable Millie Odhiambo come, she can have the liberty of using slave kings, Honorable Speaker. What I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, Honorable Millie Odhiambo want to appear in Mzalendo. She was number 1, I was number 2. And when I get time, she compete so that she can maintain number 1. Anyway, Honorable Speaker, before I was rudely interrupted, I was saying that sometimes you find a slave queen having several men maintaining one single child, claiming that this child belongs to that particular person. You know, once you are told that this is your child, you'll of course not want it to go to public. And the same child that was told that it is for Mbui is also being told that it is for Mbadi, and is also told it is for Kaluma, and all of them are sending upkeep money differently. In fact, you find Mbadi asking Kaluma to give him some little money on M-Pesa. They don't know that they are sending to the same slave queen, Honorable Speaker. So this law is very important, and it will try to mitigate some of this. It is good because it exempts person with disability, and person with disability are exempted from such maintenance, Honorable Speaker, according to the United Nations Convention on the Rights.
Well, your time is over anyway, but what is it, Honorable Mbui? What is it? What is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, please, I would like you to put order in the House. The Honorable 001 has just named me and the leader of minority as a possible woman eaters who would be sharing and paying for one child because the woman is cheating us. Mr. Speaker, I think he has to withdraw and apologize to us and use an example without naming anyone, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, well, though, of course, if he said possible, then you know it's a relative issue. But I think you really don't need to. Don't need to use some members as inferences on this particular one. So, Honorable Sankok, what do you have to say in terms of withdrawing? You had finished your time anyway.
Honorable Speaker, I was just using examples, but if that one have really made them feel guilty, you know, when the truth is being spoken, sometimes it becomes a bit guilty. So let me withdraw the truth.
You are out of order there. Let's proceed. Now, I give an opportunity to the Honorable Nyekal, member for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I arise to support this bill. Mr. Speaker.
Oh, sorry. Okay, proceed, but I made a proceed.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, this bill addresses the issue of succession, which is at the heart of a lot of problems and disruption in our social order. Mr. Speaker, you know that marriage...
And just to something here, as you proceed, Honorable Dr. Nyekal, the Honorable Dual, your card has actually been scaled down, so you will remind me after I give the leader of minority to remember you again, since there is something that happened, and therefore interfered with your ranking.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I was saying, Mr. Speaker, this is at the heart of succession, which actually disrupts our culture in a very major way, our social setup. Mr. Speaker, you know, marriage, children, and family is the core of any society. So any issue that touches there is extremely important. And the issue of succession has been such issue. Members have said here, Mr. Speaker, that it has tainted many burials of many very prominent people. Bodies have been kept for years in the mortuary. Funerals have been disrupted, and strangers have appeared when people should be mourning, and it is just because of this. Mr. Speaker, it's pitting spouses against each other, particularly where there are polygamous marriages, whether legal or not legal. There have been many battles. Mr. Speaker, it's pitting children against each other. And Mr. Speaker, we have had long cases, particularly where you have children of various spouses, and sometimes, Mr. Speaker, property stay in the banks while people are actually suffering because the issues cannot be resolved. So this bill, Mr. Speaker, I think has come at the appropriate time. We thank Honorable Kaluma. And the whole essence of it, Mr. Speaker, actually has been around the definition of a spouse, the definition of a marriage, and the definition of dependence. And this bill actually addresses those adequately to my mind. In the definition of dependence, it has been assumed that husbands are not dependents of wives until proved otherwise. As we are fighting for the gender rule, time has come that we have also to accept the reality that many men are actually dependents of their wives, and justifiably so, and sometimes even support the wives in their pursuits. So it is important that that is taken into consideration. Mr. Speaker, when you look at polygamous marriages, again, some wives have actually been deprived. Their children have been deprived of their livelihoods. And again, it's because of the definition. Mr. Speaker, other people who have been dependent on the deceased, although my other members are saying that when I was supporting you in my lifetime, when I go, then it is you are now on your own. But reality in life, there are some kinds of support, some kinds of privileges that actually a way should be found of supporting such people when circumstances change, such as at the death of a person. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, this bill has actually made very appropriate definitions of a spouse as a husband or a wife or wives, and that has come out clearly. Mr. Speaker, it has also defined fairly clearly to my mind who the dependents are. Although some of us are saying that we have put many dependents, brothers, half-brothers, grandparents, parents, but in reality in our society, take grandchildren, take parents, they are actual dependents of people. And when the person who they are dependent on dies, it's not fair that one person now decides that all these people who are depending now have to go. Now it is mine alone. I think that's not fair, and the recognition of this in this bill is an important point. Mr. Speaker, I also like this bill because even those who may claim that they were dependent have been given, I think, a time that is reasonable. You have to prove fairly distinctly that for over a period of time you are dependent. So to some extent, nobody has actually been left out. Things have been made fairly clear, and it is my hope that when this bill is passed, and I will urge colleagues to pass it, and it becomes an act, the court will find it useful in actually shortening the long periods and the sufferings that people go through, the disruptions of very solemn moments in people's lives, the enmities that come between families, particularly offspring, sometimes even resulting in death when people are fighting over property. To that, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill.
Leader of Minority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to also make my contribution to this bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by thanking Honorable Kaluma. I know a lot has been said about him in the media, people who feel that he is so passionate about certain issues. But that is very common with us. Each one of us has passion for something. And I think Kaluma is not wrong, Honorable Kaluma is not wrong to be passionate about succession issues and issues of family and family life. We know Millie Odhiambo is very passionate about issues children, and some of us are very passionate about issues finance. So each one of us has an area. I'm not so sure what Honorable Sanskok is passionate about, but he's passionate about almost everything. But Mr. Speaker, I just want to urge first that we need to encourage Kenyans to die tested, that we should not die intestate and leave our dependents at the mercy of legal interpretations and court cases and lawyers eating the estate of those who have died. So that, to me, is the starting point. The second thing is also that I think we need to start encouraging Kenyans to embrace the culture of hard work and not to rely on inheritance and wealth created by others to take after they have left. In fact, I was thinking of a very radical decision that in future, going forward, this country should come up even with laws that if you are dead, a portion of your estate should go to the government, so that just a portion is left to others to share, that other people should also fight. It would also discourage corruption, where people amass so much wealth, even after 60, 70 years, you find someone is very old and tired and walking with a stick and still stealing billions. You wonder what and which the period that person has to eat or to consume that which they are accumulating. It's because they want to leave money for their children and grandchildren, to make these people lazy, to depend on what they have stolen from the state coffers. This may be discouraged by putting a law where a portion of your wealth, once you die, should devolve to the state, because the state helped to create that wealth for you in one way or the other. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with Kaluma that I think we need to be very clear in defining, because we have seen how these legal terminologies have been misused, Mr. Speaker. That when you talk of a former wife, and I don't know where we were when this law was passing, that you talk generally of a former wife or wives. Mr. Speaker, this left the interpretation of who is a wife, who is wives, to the judges and the lawyers to argue. And you know how long the succession cases in this country take. And Mr. Speaker, you find someone dies, and for 20 years, the children are languishing in poverty, and the grandchildren, and yet the wealth of that person is a contest in court. And it is the lawyers who are profiting from the same. They don't even want to conclude the cases. Because, Mr. Speaker, the longer the cases take, the more money they make. So, Mr. Speaker, I think I agree that we need to remove this definition of former wife and wives. Either you are a wife or you are not. The moment you are no longer my wife, we should, when I'm still alive, we should agree, when you are departing, leaving me as a wife, as my wife, to either go with your portion of my wealth or you leave them. Once you leave anything with me, that belongs to me and the current wife or wives I have. So I agree fully that this thing of former wives and wives, wife and wives, I don't know where it came from. Mr. Speaker, something that I think Honorable Kaluma, as the owner of the bill, needs, or the promoter of the bill, needs to look at, is the amendment to Section 29, which has been repealed, which here is Clause 3B, that it talks about such of the deceased parents, step-parents, grandparents, grandchildren, stepchildren, children, whom the deceased had taken into his family as his own. But after saying that, then it goes to brothers and sisters and half-brothers and half-sisters as were being maintained by the deceased immediately prior to his death. Mr. Speaker, either we define what maintaining means or we be very clear. Because right now I'm paying school fees to so many of my nephews. And that can be treated as maintenance, because I even give pocket money to them. So does it mean now when I die, then they automatically have a say in my wealth? I don't think so. And Mr. Speaker, if I was philanthropic to help many of my clansmen and my family members and extended family members, it doesn't mean that my children will have to continue with that philanthropy. We need to leave some space for those who are remaining as my beneficiaries or dependents to make a decision whether they want to continue with the life of philanthropy or not. Probably I was a Christian, I believe in life after death. It doesn't have to be automatically true with my children. So we need to be clear. And I'm asking Honorable Kaluma, because he has a better legal mind. Actually, he has a legal mind I don't have. He should either define what maintaining means.
Now, you know, you are saying you don't have a mind. He has a legal mind. You don't.
I don't have a legal mind, Mr. Speaker. I have a financial mind. Not that I don't have a mind. You also know I have a mind, Mr. Speaker.
All minds legally belong to
the... Anyway, the bottom line is I'm also a lawmaker, so I have some...
I thought so.
But he has a better one, unless he has forgotten. But, Mr. Speaker, the way I know Kaluma, he can think better in legal terms. So I want him to go and define clearly what maintaining means,
Order,
for
what
us.
what is it, Honorable Member for Game?
No.
What is it?
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity, but I think it's been now more clearer. Because if we talk about cognitive dimension of a human being, it does not necessarily cluster the mind as in reference to legal entity.
Now you have
Unless-
brought more confusion than
I'm just
than was
clarifying.
existing.
I'm just clarifying.
Yes.
You know,
How do you clarify when there is
Mr. Speaker, human has four facets.
No,
You
no,
have
no.
the psychomotor, you have the cognitive, and the normative dimension of a human being. And it was important to school my chairman
You know,
so that he used the derivatives.
I know where you come from, Honorable Member. You know, Game is a place where there are some minds. You know, those are the first people probably who went to school in serious terms. But now you don't have to bring in the psychomotor and and all the psychos here.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. It was just for clarity. Thank you, sir.
Okay, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure whether he has clarified because I think he has confused me more. But, Mr. Speaker, I understand as you do where Honorable Elisha Odhiambo comes from. That is the gem, and you know what gem means. In terms of academic, that is the citadel of elitism in that region. And I think he was very good in biology. I was very good in sciences, but biology was my weakest science subject. Not that I was weak in biology. I know I probably am better than majority of members here, but in terms, in absolute terms, with other sciences, physics and chemistry, Mr. Speaker, I would demonstrate that I was not, biology was ranking a little low, but in physics and chemistry, if there are members here who would challenge me, especially when I was in school, there would be very few, and Sankok probably could be one of them. But, Mr. Speaker, I was just winding up. Of course, Millie cannot rank anyway. Millie, I know where her strength has been. So, Mr. Speaker, let me conclude. It depends on where you are best. You know, you would have been best where the best was getting 25%. But, Mr. Speaker, I just want to conclude by saying that really, I think we need to be very clear on...
You mentioned the member for Suba, who is your neighbor.
No, I did mention her in bad light. Millie is the best lawyer I know. One of the best lawyers I know
Honorable
in the country.
Odhiambo Akoth. What is it?
Mr. Speaker, is honorable minority leader and my neighbor in Suba South in order to mislead the House. Mr. Speaker, even though I'm an excellent lawyer, I want Honorable Mbadi to know that in the national exams, my Form 4, I was one of the best in the country. One of the best, not in my school, in the country. And you need to put that and keep it for records. And I was best in maths. I was best in physics. I was only not good in chemistry because I was asking the teacher too many questions. Like when they said that let us test litmus paper, and then it answered, I said, then after that, what? But I was the best, Mr. Speaker.
No, I think...
Which year was that? The same year we sat with you.
I think that Suba exchange is,
Yes.
you know, that's a real Suba academic exchange. Now we can proceed. Now we realize that the Subas are very good in mathematics and...
Actually, Mr. Speaker, I wanted just to say that I may not doubt that because Subas are very good in mathematics. And especially where there are no many Subas, you are likely to be one of the best. So, Mr. Speaker, having said that, I want to just wind up by saying that I support this amendment fully, and I think it should be looked at in context, as I said, without looking at Kaluma and the history, because Kaluma has had history of some two bills that I didn't like, even myself. But this one, I think, Mr. Speaker, it was spot on. It just needs to help us. Actually, the one that I talked about on maintenance has just been uplifted from the Act as it is today. So I'm just requesting Kaluma to also take this advantage of this opportunity provided for us and make amendments and make it very clear so that once I depart, I saw, Mr. Speaker, you feared departing this world, but departing this world you must. And once I depart, Mr. Speaker, I would not want to see a situation where my children are fighting with people who ordinarily, if I was on this earth, I would not want to see or come anywhere close to my property or wealth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Now, the Honorable Professor Oduol will have to wait a little more because, many members have spoken from this direction. So let me go to Honorable Ogutu and then come back to you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support the amendment that has been put forward with regard to inheritance. As Mr. Speaker, I want to make a few observations. One observation is what has already been alluded by Honorable Mbadi, that indeed, as we think about inheritance, we must also think about the dynamics that are going on in society. It's not a privilege of men to inherit from their fathers anymore. Because within the African tradition, what was common to be inherited was land and the wealthy from the parents. So, Speaker, this is no more the case. And because of that, we are now seeing what I could call moving wealthy, which includes gains because of education, gains because of every sort of investment that the people will make as a family. And because of that, Mr. Speaker, I want to also say that even as we think about this amendment, let us also think about how we can induct discipline for work, discipline for the desire to be able to generate resources as individuals, so that it's not a question of looking at one person who is a husband or one person who is a wife to wait until they die, then you can inherit. But it's an issue that we want every child gotten through marriage or any form of inheritance to be aware that they are also supposed to contribute to the wealthy of that family, so that we do not see a number of idlers hanging when it comes to the loss of a key member in our family, hanging only to be claiming for inheritance. Mr. Speaker, I want also to agree with what has been raised by one of our members, that we need to think about grading this inheritance. There are those who may have invested more than others. There are those who will have gotten into the line as the family life continues, so that we do not just put together and do the subdivision of the wealth that has been left behind on a pro rata basis. We do it on a basis on how much one has contributed to the acquisition of that property. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, the Professor Oduol.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for an opportunity to speak on this amendment bill. Honorable Speaker, I want to start by thanking Honorable Kaluma for indeed enabling us to address a matter of great concern. And Honorable Speaker, as I support the amendment bill, I do it with some reservation or recommendation which I would like Honorable Speaker to present to me. Honorable Speaker, I support the bill, the amendment bill, because the amendment bill seeks to ensure that we create greater protection for spouses, for children, and for extended family in succession matters in the event that somebody is lost. Honorable Speaker, indeed, members have demonstrated the manner in which there has been a lot of drama and indeed untold pain when it is not clear who is seen to be the dependent. Honorable Speaker, as I support this amendment bill, however, I'd like for us as members and as the society to look at the matter that we are talking about from the context of how we want to protect the family. And Honorable Speaker, the minority leader, who I am sure has some passionometer somewhere, identified the different areas that we are passionate about. I want, Honorable Speaker, to declare that I am very passionate, Honorable Speaker, on issues that relate to gender equality, and particularly the manner in which in the family unit we ensure that both women and men act as adults, caregivers, and duty bearers to protect the children. It is in this regard, Honorable Speaker, that as I support the amendment bill, I'd like, Honorable Speaker, to draw attention of the Honorable Kaluma on where I want to start to take issue. Honorable Speaker, when we look at the proposed amendment on Section 329(2), where, Honorable Speaker, in the amendment bill, we are saying that a person not named in this section shall not be a dependent for the purposes of this act unless the person proves maintained by the deceased for a period of 2 years prior to the deceased's death. Honorable Speaker, this is an open blanket to allow and create confusion and to interfere with the fundamental unit of the family, one which, Honorable Speaker, adults above 18 years get involved in with respect to what it is that it entails. Honorable Speaker, when we look, and indeed Honorable Karuma indicates, that we will be looking at marriage as defined by the Marriage Act, it is clear, Honorable Speaker, that we can have a civil marriage, which can be in church or could be the DC, Attorney General, and that really means one man, one wife. Honorable Speaker, you can have a customary marriage where you can have as many as you would want. Honorable Speaker, the Islamic, where you can have up to 4. There is Hindu marriages, you have one wife. And Honorable Speaker, there is also the clause of cohabitation, which is then seen to be for those who choose to take that angle. I, Honorable Speaker, would like, as we speak to this matter, to ensure that we do not burden children with a lot of complications and also reward adults who choose, Honorable Speaker, to interfere with an clearly arranged value system and unit of marriage. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, as I look at this, I want us to acknowledge that there is a sense in which, Honorable Speaker, that the Honorable Kaluma, who, as we have clearly indicated, understands what is happening not only in the Constitution, but also in our courts. We know, Honorable Speaker, that if there is a child born out of wedlock, the Constitution already provides that there would be absolutely no problem that any child born out of wedlock would not be taken care of. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, as I speak in terms of the protection and care of children, I am aware that the Constitution has already handled this. So, Honorable Speaker, what I know also is that it is the courts that create a problem. Because, Honorable Speaker, on the floor today, there has been a lot of emphasis on women and how women are the ones who choose to create confusion. I do not support them, Honorable Speaker. I do not support a woman who chooses not to take the responsibility of marriage, who comes and interferes and then seeks to be rewarded. But equally, Honorable Speaker, I do not support a man who has chosen that he is going to marry by civil marriage, that he's going to have one wife. And then somewhere along the line, Honorable Speaker, this man has many wives all over the place. Honorable Speaker, I think it is clear that the Constitution is presented to help us also maintain our values.
Order, Professor. What is out of order, Honorable Sankok?
Honorable Speaker, Prof is misleading the House, Honorable Speaker, because if the man did not want to see the extra wife in life, why should he see her in death? If I hated you in life, I should hate you in death. So keep away from my family.
So, I am not sure where Honorable Sankok that fits in, but that was a contribution through the back door.
Honorable Speaker, I think today indeed is an important day because the Honorable Sankok has for a while made the entire country and the National House think that he is 001. Honorable Speaker, he is only 001 on the other side. 001 on this side where I am is yours truly, who is speaking right now, Honorable Speaker. And I think you can see from the kind of intervention that he raised that maybe we need to revise and be sure that we know who 001 is in the House. So, Honorable Speaker, as we look at this, I would like that we take note that it is the courts that create confusion, and I would like, Honorable Speaker, that we do not come up with an amendment that actually supports or encourages the court to cause this confusion. Because if anyone has married from the perspective of civil marriage, then they actually only have one wife. And Honorable Speaker, in the interpretation, it would therefore mean that in the event that we are dealing with succession, they really would only just have one wife. And Honorable Speaker, this situation where we have in the courts that somebody would have been married under civil marriage, where really legitimately they only have one wife, and then for some reason, somebody else stands up who knew very well that this was a civil marriage, and they are given recognition, is something that should not be encouraged. And so, Honorable Speaker, as I support this amendment bill, I would want to request the Honorable Kaluma that for the very reason that we would like to maintain clarity of values, ensure that we not only protect our children, but that we are models, that as young girls and young boys grow up, they know they have a choice whether they want to get married or not. They can also, of course, choose whether they decide that it is much more preferable for them to have children out of wedlock. But, Honorable Speaker, I think it would be very unfortunate that in a country where we are talking about maintaining national values, moral values, protecting the family unit, and indeed encouraging both men and women to be responsible, that we would want to give the same amount of attention to those who just choose to have children out of marriage and treat them in the same way as somebody who was in the marriage. So, Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, I support and I hope that the angle that I have raised will be addressed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Honorable Tobiko, Pesi.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I rise to support this bill. And Honorable Speaker, I thank the Honorable Kaluma for really addressing this very sensitive part of our law, sensitive in the community and sensitive because of the dynamics that are there in society today, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think this law seeks to bring clarity into the Succession Act by defining properly who a dependent is and who a spouse is, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have seen a lot of, court battles that have really endangered lives of families, put lives of, dependents of a deceased into a lot of problems, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, particularly, for the who is who in this country, every time, they pass on, the next thing that we expect are a lot of court battles, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have also seen that ambiguity in law can cause chaos in families, Mr. Speaker, bring confusion, and disenfranchise or disinherit those who are, the legal dependents of a person, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think this law today, as brought in by the Honorable Kaluma, is clear, Mr. Speaker, but just like Professor Oduol, I really think we should then, take this opportunity to address all ambiguities, Mr. Speaker, because in Article 3, subsection 2, where it says a person not named in this section shall not be a dependent for the purposes of this act unless the person proves maintained by the deceased for a period of two years prior to the deceased's death. Honorable Kaluma, because you are in the House, I think this still brings back the slave queens, brings back, the hangers-on around marriages, Mr. Speaker. There are too many busybodies hanging around, well-to-do men or people, well-to-do men and women, actually, who have struggled in their lives with their families, and once they have, become something in society, they now get too many hangers-on, Mr. Speaker. And so we should seek, Mr. Speaker, to clarify even on this one. Because really, as long as you are not a spouse, you are not a child, you are not a grandchild, and you are not a parent of the deceased, where then do you come in? I'm sure we all buy lunches out there. I'm sure people are maintaining even their constituents in a way or in one way or another. And in a term of 5 years, I would have maintained a number of people more than 2 years, Honorable Kaluma. And so if these people come to now lay claim into my property because I was maintaining them for more than 2 years, I think it puts people into a lot of problems, Mr. Speaker. And so I think we should clarify on this one. And I still think Article 3(1) B still needs to be upgraded, Mr. Speaker, so that all those too many so-called dependents are clarified, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we have seen in this country, and usually, Mr. Speaker, when let me see, particularly men, when men reach a certain age, when they are going downwards to the age of 60s and thereabout, Mr. Speaker, they get confused. They get confused, and Mr. Speaker, you see them hanging around, little girls.
Honorable Tobiko, what is the intervention for Honorable Odhiambo?
It is true, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Tobiko.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable. Let her explain. Honorable Cheng is on a point of order.
I've listened to the honorable member, and she has mentioned that men above 60 get confused because their spouses in the house are not performing. So they must move out to get others who can ensure that the marriage institution is protected. Because the marriage institution is for procreation. It's not for flower.
No.
Thank you.
Honorable Speaker.
Order. Honorable
Speaker, was that a point of order? Was that a point of information?
Honorable Tobiko. Order, members. There is Honorable Otiende, but before Honorable Otiende, Honorable Cheng, you are not 60 yet. But she raised an issue which is of interest. I'm sure she will be kind enough to explain further about that 60 years thing.
Thank you.
But Honorable Otiende, what is it?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the Honorable Tobiko to perpetuate discrimination on grounds of age? that it is only men and only those above 60 who get confused. Is that really in order?
And not only that, Honorable Tiende, the members are not very clear what type of confusion he's talking about. Why is Honorable Miri shouting loudest on a point of order? What is it? What is it, Honorable Miri? You look very agitated on that point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance.
You shouted so much, we have to give it to you.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, because when somebody gives a very discriminatory statement against me personally, I have to stand. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Diambo, in speaking, said that marriage is for procreation. I do not have a child. Is he therefore suggesting that I'm not married, Mr. Speaker? That is a very grave and serious issue, Mr. Speaker. You must be mindful of people who have no children, Mr. Speaker. I am in this house to protect the right of people with no children, to protect the rights of children and women of all categories. Okay. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, there is also something called midlife crisis. All men should know that. Just take some Panadol to ease the midlife crisis. Panadol kidogo.
Order members. That debate seems to be transiting to one that we should have over tea, not here. And it is based on the point that Honorable Tobiko raised.
Yes.
She will say what confusion. But before you, Honorable Tobiko, Honorable Didi can't allow you to talk. He is behind you. And
Mr. Speaker, my time, Mr. Speaker. My time, Mr. Speaker. My time.
Honorable Tobiko, you'll have your time. Honorable Didi, what is it?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Honorable Tobiko to impute improper motives, and especially to members who are above 60 years? Because the public might think that you are making confused laws in this House, Mr. Speaker. I think the honorable members should apologize, and especially to the honorable members, like Karuma, who are approaching 60 years.
Honorable Tobiko, please. You can tell your statement of confusion of those who are above 60 what it has caused. Honorable Tobiko.
Honorable Speaker, this one was really not targeting the members, Mr. Speaker. I was just saying, biologically, Mr. Speaker, you know, certain ages, like during teenage years, you know, biology, in our biology classes, Mr. Speaker, we learned that there are certain characteristics of that age. And even men at the age of 60 are busy denying that they are going down, Mr. Speaker, and so they want to prove. So, Mr. Speaker, and you know, Mr. Speaker, this was not meant for the members, but the truth, Mr. Speaker, is a lot of men are hanging around with very young girls, Mr. Speaker, and bringing confusion into marriages, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and let me say, marriage is not necessarily meant for procreation only. It's meant for companionship. It's meant, you know, also, it's not meant for, and I agree with Honorable Millie, it's not meant for procreation only, Mr. Speaker. It is for companionship and all other values that make, you know, a family, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I congratulate Honorable Kaluma for bringing this bill.
Very well. Honorable Tobiko, it is good you have clarified. I can tell Honorable Kaluma is extremely excited that you have clarified about that confusion. But I'm not 60 years. Well, Honorable Didi Nyoro confirmed you are nearing 60. You are approaching 60. Honorable Shabil.
Chairman, firstly, I'd like to declare that I'm over 60. I don't think I'm not confused. I am not confused. I stand to support this great bill, the purpose of which is to avoid situations where opportunistic schemers successfully try and claim a stake in the deceased person, and to give clarity on what is a dependent and who is not a dependent. Honorable Speaker, sir, I am from the Islamic faith, and in the Islamic faith we are very clear on the issue whether it is testate or intestate, and very clear on the issue of who or who is not a dependent. We do not have in the Islamic faith, in Islamic law, any billionaire leaving money for their cat or their rat or their cow or whatever. But in the Western world, we have seen so many people leaving money, billions of shillings, leaving their wife out of it, leaving their children and giving it to the cat. I think this is one of the issues that this particular bill is here to deal with. And I think what is important is that there are rules which determine the right of what is to happen after a person's death. That is by way of testate and intestate. And I think what it is, basically, the clarity that is being sought here is the issue of who is a dependent. In the Islamic faith, anybody who is part of your blood is your dependent. In the Islamic faith, you may be taken care of in the last throes of your life by somebody who took care of you, and then we are not allowed to inherit everything because that lady took care of you in the last 10 years or 8 years of your life, whereas the whole family was there before. Sometimes people come, I have seen, even there are some Wazungus who come here, they've been in the last throes of their life, and they're taken care of by their girlfriends, and they leave everything there. I think this is what we're trying to say. As I said, we are a polygamous society. We have also children. I myself have a child. I have 6 children, 7 children, 4 together, which I think I'm the only MP here who has quadruplet children, 4 of them at one go. 4 of them. And they were 1 year ago. 1 year ago. And that is why we are saying that I may have other children. I think I'm on record. I don't know whether I'm the only MP in the history of the Kenya Parliament. But in any case, at 67 years old, I am 67 years old, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I want to, at that time, I want to give acknowledgement to the support that I have received from not only my members of Parliament, but my family. But let's go back to this issue of inheritance. In inheritance, I think Honorable Kaluma has hit the thing on the head. But I think you should also look at what is Sharia law to help you to understand. Sharia law comes out of thousands of years. And then there is what is called traditional African law. Tradition. What did tradition say? Tradition tried to maintain the asset within the clan, within the tribe. So I think those are the sort of things. That's the African tradition. And then we have the Islamic law, which says whether you make a will or not, even if you make a will, the will only cover 1/3 of your estate. The rest, 2/3, will be covered under Sharia law, unless, of course, in your lifetime you give it away. So that means that, even under the law, when we're talking about what is called dependent, you can have stepsons, you can have adopted children. An adopted child is your dependent and must remain as good as your child of blood. And it is treated the same. And I think this is what Honorable Kaluma has now come to say. Today, if I adopt somebody, even if I adopted that person, that child, even if he's 20 years old, is my child. And there's no clarity, there's no need to go to Western law to tell you what is your child and who is not your child. And I think this is what Honorable Kaluma is trying to come up and protect the family unit. As defined under the African tradition, what is our unit? And where did the slave queens come from, and what happened? And slave kings. So I think, Mr. Speaker, sir, the only concern that I have in this respect is paragraph 3.32, where it says, a person not named in this section shall not be a dependent of the purpose unless the person is maintained for the last 2 years. I think that should be deleted. With respect of the rest of the thing, I want to congratulate my brother, Honorable Kaluma, to get this thing hit on the head so that we and our succession, law of succession, becomes sensible. And you take away these so-called rogue lawyers who can extend something for so long, just so at the end of the time, the actual dependent gets, the inheritant gets nothing, and the lawyers come out with huge bills. So I think that is the point that I think Honorable Kaluma is doing. Let us have distinction as to who is a dependent, who is not. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Chepkwony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity for me to add to what Honorable Kaluma has brought to this House. And let me start by congratulating Kaluma for coming up with this nice concept of the succession amendment bill. Mr. Speaker, I wish also to support it on the basis that it is seeking to know the valid dependents and in relation with inheritance. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit getting worried when I go to Section B in relation to all the people mentioned here. Therefore, for me, to Honorable Kaluma, I think this one is giving us a platform for us to improve it more better, because when you mention all these dependents, let us take just a possibility in this country. When a woman loses her husband, like the way you saw it the other day in Mount Kenya TV when the wife of the late Murunga was brought up, when she was explaining how the burial was stopped by someone from somewhere, I thought when you bring all these people being dependent, we are going to make this matter more hard for the people who are going to be losing their beloved. Therefore, let us improve on this part. But I wish to appreciate the concept. If it is going to be improved more better, it is actually going to bring integrity to families, because we have also, as members of parliament, attended most of the burials where we are also even left when we are traumatized. You reach there as a member of parliament, you have attended a burial, but as you try to see it, you are told the burial has been stopped because there was a court order, and it leaves children more traumatized, the parent of the deceased, the widows, the widowers. It leaves very many people in a very chaotic scenario. In addition also to what I'm proposing to Honorable Kaluma, it is good, as Mheshimiwa Jacqueline mentioned, let's also revisit the matters of the other marriages we have in this country, like the Christian marriage, like the customary marriage, like Islamic marriage, the way Mheshimiwa said. Let us know what actually is there, so that when we try to get that information, it can give us a better platform to make it more better and improve it. But also, Mr. Speaker, let me take this chance to say this. Though we are talking about, I have heard most of the men are talking about slave queens. Sometimes they also forget the slave kings in this country. But on that basis, it is also a responsibility for men to be very responsible. And what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, we don't have every time for men to pretend you love the high time. Men should have a lot of courage. If you love many women, please don't wait until you die. Then they will come with their children to claim for what to be given as for them to inherit. It is also a platform to remind our fellow women and our girl child in this country that where it has reached, and we have seen also many cases where very innocent women, they are cheated by irresponsible men who tell them that they would marry them. They give birth with them. It is also on this platform we want to tell our girl child and our women in this country, please, these men who are coming to tell you they love you and they keep you as mpango wa kando, they don't want to be noted by their wives or their families. Push them. Let them recognize you. And actually, where we are also suffering so much, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is because we have forgotten our traditions in this country. Most of us come in families where maybe fathers had very many wives, but they lived at peace And also traditionally, when men wanted to marry many wives, there is even some, but it gives us a platform also to remind our colleagues and also other men in this country, please, if you want an extended family, wife and many wives, please make it very clear to avoid a lot of frustrating women. Remember the women you are calling them Mpango ya Kando and the queens, they are the daughters of people, they are the sisters to some people, they are very important people to this country. Therefore, we don't have a room also for men to misuse women, to cheat them, just to use them like objects. Let many peer on basis of what is Mheshimiwa Kaluma is coming up in relation with the succession, the inheritance, the validity of knowing who are the dependents. Let us also remind men, please. Let them be responsible. Fathers, you don't have to go giving birth outside and you throw away wives you have given women. Then once they give birth to your children, you are calling them slay queens. They are not your slay queens, they were your sweethearts when you are making those kids. Therefore, be responsible men. That's what we are saying. Yes, that's what we are saying, that even you men, you don't have to repeat this word anymore, slay queens. They are not slay queens after they give birth. When you have sweet times with them, they are your darlings and you are sweethearts. Okay? Therefore, what we need also when we talk about the succession, we need responsible men that even after they give birth, let them be your sweethearts and introduce them as part of your families, and may you take right legal actions to make sure that they are also included as dependent in this country.
Address the speaker, don't address the men. Address the speaker.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Please protect me because you are also a man, please. Protect me, Mr. Speaker, sir. And on that, Mr. Speaker, I'll just finish by saying actually it has been so much traumatizing in this country when we see barriers stopped with court orders, when families are crying, kings are families, and the people who have lost their family members are crying. I think this bill is going to bring a lot of respect, and it is going to bring integrity to the families. And therefore, to our girl child, to our women, please, these men who put you somewhere and they call you Mipango ya Kandos, push them to recognize you before God takes them away. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Well, that was quite sobering. Before I give Honorable Miri, let's have Honorable Muli Fambian.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to add my voice on this amendment bill of law of succession. The Law of Succession Act came 1972, where up to now we have been having a lot of conflict of law, especially in matters of religion, beliefs, traditional laws, and also society norms. We have been having a lot of challenges in terms of implementing the succession law. If Honorable Speaker, you can see the notes in Law of Succession Act, they are very small notes, but the cases are very many. Also not forgetting to thank Honorable Kaluma for proving to us he's a family man, he loves family, and showing us the way to show it point blank that it is very important to recognize wives. Saying that does not mean that we are in support of polygamous or we are not in support of polygamous. We are in support of reality. Honorable Speaker, if you see many cases where our brothers and sisters, they pass or they are deceased, a lot of family unity is broken because of this constraint of cases. Many people living near families, they are not there for good faith. They are there to be opportunists. So I'm thanking Honorable Kaluma for recognizing that they are opportunists living near the families, and at any time they can break the families. Honorable Speaker, I'm in the school of thought that the best way to deal with the in terms of your property, make sure that your estates are tested. This bill is not going to solve the issues of families at a whole, but he has just given the interpretations in terms of the court. Like you see back in 1990s, there are too many cases pending because judges or magistrates are not able to point which law to use to rule the cases. So in terms of the bill by Honorable Kaluma, it's going to give the specified way to make rulings in the court, but this is not going to solve the cases of society. So I'm urging Honorable Speaker, the society of this country, we need to work with tested estates, to forget about intested estates. If we work with wills, we are going to leave our family. I know you cannot tell when you'll die, but let's work with wills so that we'll be able to solve these cases. And this way, we give the families, our do for families and constituents. Honorable Speaker, the other thing which we need to see in terms of property, in terms of respect in the society, is men and the women recognize the good morals of the life, that if you have a partner, you'll be able to not live with hidden partners, but live in open life by trying to declare if you are one man wife, if you are one woman with two men, declare it openly. And this one will make sure that your wills, everything is mentioned. There is also the conflict, Honorable Speaker, and I'm not forgetting to calculate the Islamic Sharia, is only, if you see many cases in 1980s, 1990s, not easy to get Islamic Sharias having these cases of succession in property. So it's also important when we are implementing this bill, we are trying to conclude this bill on that reading, we need to see what happened in these Islamic Sharias, that they are not having many cases, but other corners we have in many cases. So, Honorable Speaker, this bill is very important for this Kenyan society. And also we should not see people being opportunists. There is nobody will become opportunist unless you open the doors for them to come near you. So this bill is going to save families. And thank you very much, Honorable Karuma. And I support the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Miri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even as I support Honorable Kaluma in this bill, I want to say that, and I want to quote somebody that something that I saw on social media by a person I don't know called Emmanuel Swaka, and he defined persons who are deceased as follows. Hayati is a dead person who's left behind a lot of wealth and assets. Marehemu is a dead person who has left behind lots of bills and is also listed by CRB as loan defaulting. Mwenda zake, this one there is little to write about him. Alizaliwa, akazurura, akagongwa na gari, akafa. Mr. Speaker, when we are dealing with the issues that Honorable Kaluma is trying to deal with, Mr. Speaker, I think a lot of issues come when we are dealing especially with Hayati. We don't see a lot of issues when we're dealing with the cases of Mwenda zake and Marehemu. So, Mr. Speaker, in order to help us deal with this kind of categories, Mr. Speaker, the proposed amendment by Honorable Kaluma is very apt. And Mr. Speaker, as a Christian, I want to quote the book of Proverbs, chapter 30, verses 19, that says, the way of an eagle in the air, some of the things that used to perplex King Solomon. And we know that King Solomon was one of the wisest people on earth. Yet some of the things that confused King Solomon was the way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man and a maid. Mr. Speaker, these issues that perplex the most brilliant man on earth or recorded man on earth are the issues that are still perplexing us today. That you would be surprised and amazed, Mr. Speaker, that everyone is supporting Honorable Kaluma, yet, Mr. Speaker, we seem to be still taking gendered lines. That you can see women are moving in one direction and men are moving in one direction. Why is that, Mr. Speaker? Because of the way we are made. And I'd want to say there's a retired judge who actually challenged us as women and said that there is in a ruling, a 60-page ruling, And he said that one of the reasons that women went to Beijing was because they went to Beijing as a basis of rebellion against men. Mr. Speaker, we did not go to Beijing as a basis of rebellion against men. But because these issues of equality have always persisted in the society, even in biblical times, Mr. Speaker, and I want to quote for you the book of Numbers, chapter 27, that we have the amazing 5 daughters of Zelophehad who fought for the right of inheritance because they were being excluded. And because they went before the man of God, they were allowed, Mr. Speaker, and they changed the law of Israel that even women who are not married in their community were then able to inherit. But Mr. Speaker, Honorable Kaluma is bringing a very difficult one, Mr. Speaker. And the difficult one, Mr. Speaker, should be actually difficult for us as women. It is difficult because we are the ones who have been calling for equality. Yet when it comes to where the rubber meets the road, sometimes we are not very true and genuine about the equality we talk about. That we seem to think that equality is only equality when it applies to us, but it's not equality when it actually favors the men. What Honorable Kaluma is trying to do is to bring equality for men. And I truly support that as women, when we are talking about equality, it should be equality both ways. Because what is good for the goose is good for the gander. And therefore, if me as a woman, I should be able to inherit from my husband when he's dead, then my husband should also be able to inherit under the same terms. My husband should not go and prove in court that he was dependent on me for him to inherit. If the woman should not be doing the same. But if we want to show dependency, then it should be both ways. As women, if we want equality, we must be ready to partake of what comes with equality. That equality must protect women as much as it also protects men. What I would want to challenge Honorable Kaluma about is that in this case it's done very well to protect the men. Honorable Kaluma is my uncle because he comes from where my mother comes from. Please protect women the same way I'm also protecting men today. So that you don't only bring laws that will be supporting men, but when it comes to law supporting women, we get excuses. Like the same men, after Zelophehad's daughters went and sought for inheritance, then came and said, what about if our daughters go to marry men from other areas? Then our land will go to those areas. So they were forced to change the law to say, then let your daughters marry from within. Mr. Speaker, what I did is then I used the Zelophehad standards, and my husband is from within. Let me not say the details, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, because as women we must also be smart. So that if I am inheriting, I can be able to inherit now because my husband also comes from Lambwe. But because Lambwe is a settlement scheme, he comes from Zimbabwe, settled in Lambwe. So he's also one of us. So I can inherit, and I've inherited leadership because the Zelophehad daughters gave me that in the book of Numbers. But Mr. Speaker, having said that, I'd also want to say when I'm going now to the specificity of the law, that I agree with the issue of spouse. The definition of spouse is very good because it should be as per the Marriage Act. And I want to agree with Honorable Professor Jacqueline Odwal when she says that actually the challenge we have is the judges that have been confusing us. Because they are trying to bring equity where there should be no equity. Where the law is clear, there should not be a case of equity. Mr. Speaker, the Marriage Act is clear that we have different systems of marriage. If you marry under civil system of marriage, you marry one man, one wife to death. Mr. Speaker, if you married under Hindu, one man, one wife to death. So if you are a man who is disciplined and your temperature is not high, please marry under civil marriage or the Hindu system. But Mr. Speaker, if you think your temperature rises a little bit, then go and marry under Islamic law where you are allowed to marry up to 4 wives. But if you, no, customary is not up to. Islamic is up to 4 wives. But if you think that your temperature rises beyond the corona limits, Mr. Speaker, go for customary marriage, Mr. Speaker, where you can compete with a Kuku Danger who married over 60 wives, Mr. Speaker. But once you marry under customary marriage, and me, Millie Odhiambo, because I don't want a co-wife, please don't come when my husband is dead, that excuse me, I want to be recognized. If you wanted to be recognized, go and look for a man who was married under customary. Because if I'm talking about equality, if I am not given a right as a woman to marry other husbands, then let the man also not marry for us other wives when I don't want. Otherwise, we should change the marriage law and say women should also be allowed to marry as many husbands as possible. But where the law is very clear, and I am encouraging the judges, please use the law as the law is. And the law is also clear, and I'm the one who brought that amendment in the Constitution, that we can protect children born out of wedlock. And I can assure you, if my husband, upon his death, God forbid, brings suddenly many children comes up, I know that I'm the one who brought the law. And if it is proven they are his children, I will take care of them. Because that is what the law says. But if you are a woman who pops up from nowhere and are married in church, please, jipanga mapema, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, go and look for a man who was married under customary law. And we want to tell the men, if you, as I've told you, and I know I can see the honorable member is jittery because he's of the ilk of marrying many women.
What is it, Honorable Nyoro Didi? You are the one to speak next. You are the one to speak next.
Thank you.
What is out of order now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I don't think it is wise for us to perpetuate name-calling in this House. Mr. Speaker, we have had men actually doing, and even women, going through the customary marriage even before Corona. And therefore, I don't think Honorable Miri is in order to claim that people only go through the customary marriage when they experience Corona temperatures, Mr. Speaker.
I'm not sure whether Miri raised Corona temperature. Maybe she did.
Mr. Speaker, I know my brother probably didn't do literature, but can you please add me time because you swallowed up my 1 minute, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, because I wanted to raise some certain issues about how wide the bill is, some amendments that I seek to bring on dependents, like for instance for me, because I have no child, I am clear in my mind that
You have the 1 minute that, that was taken up by Honorable Didinyo. Who speaks next?
The 1 minute. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for indulging me. I am very clear, Mr. Speaker, because I have no children, that in terms of ranking and by the law, there will be my husband, there will be my sisters and brothers, my nieces and nephews that I take care of, and my grandnieces and nephews that I take care of. But, Mr. Speaker, I also take care of several other people that are depending on me. Mr. Speaker, if we leave it too wide, then it is subject to abuse. I want us to bring an amendment that is very clear where that reaches. And also, I want to also bring an amendment, Mr. Speaker, to be clear that inheritance and succession is not done at a burial, so that we don't have this drama. My own sister went through that theatric recently, and one of my nephews, people don't even know how terrible this is, refused to bury the brother, because of the father, because of that. That when your father is dead, you are trying to deal with it, suddenly people are popping up, telling you, now meet us, you are your nephews, you are your what. Please, let families bury in peace. And let us bring an amendment to stay. When you want succession, go and do it elsewhere. Burials are not the place.
Honorable Didi, Nyoro. Member for Nyando, what information and to who? To who? Honorable Miri. She's done. She's done.
Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Nyando, it's gone. Maybe you inform Honorable Didi Nyoro. But let him speak first. Maybe you realize, you will appreciate whether she needs the information. He needs the information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to support this bill by my brother, Honorable Kaluma. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it's actually evident that when Kaluma is not consumed by the handshake manenos, he actually thinks. And even when he's registrating for himself, Mr. Speaker, he also registrates for many people like him. And therefore, I support this bill, Mr. Speaker, in entirety. Mr. Speaker, the issue of succession is a very complex thing in Kenya, and I think we actually need to simplify the same. And Mr. Speaker, when we see the unclaimed assets portfolio growing by day, it is not actually the fact that people do not know they own those resources or those assets. Most of them have already gone, Mr. Speaker, but the complex nature of our succession laws, Mr. Speaker, have led to this kind of a quagmire that we are in, that the just recently formed unclaimed assets, Mr. Speaker, now we have billions of money lying in that fund, Mr. Speaker. It is because of the complex nature of our succession laws, and even this bill goes a long way into simplifying the same. But Mr. Speaker, the world that we live in, the inheritance of the yesteryears is not the inheritance of the current day, Mr. Speaker. Because in the previous years, you could not talk about inheritance without actually talking about land. But as we grow in terms of numbers, Mr. Speaker, land continues to shrink in terms of per capita land, Mr. Speaker, that we may enjoy both as citizens and also in terms of the descendants in reference to this bill. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, because of the timeliness of this bill, it behoves all of us as a citizen of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, and especially us as men, to know that the most important thing that we can bequeath to our descendants is actually to make them stand up on their feet. And one of the best ways to do that, Mr. Speaker, is to impart education unto them, because, Mr. Speaker, that is the only thing that will never be taken to court of law, claiming it belongs to this or the other. And therefore, even as we continue to evolve as a generation, Mr. Speaker, even the nature of our inheritance continues to do the same, and it is apt for us to continue moving with the times. But, Mr. Speaker, there is also the economic angle of even this bill, the succession and the inheritance. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we see in developing countries like Kenya, and even the poorer countries, inheritance is a very important topic, because we have more dependents, Mr. Speaker, than people who can be dependent on, and especially economically. And, Mr. Speaker, when we see an economy where the rate of investments of assets is higher than the GDP growth or the rate of growth in terms of the economy, in those kind of economies, something we call the Gini coefficient is usually very high. And Gini coefficient measures the inequalities within our societies, Mr. Speaker. I'm saying this because if we have an economy where you can just buy an asset or bequeath an asset from your parents, and then you can lazy around, and the rate of investment of that asset is actually higher than the rate of growth, then it therefore means the people with the basic with basic assets, Mr. Speaker, and means of production, like land, you can just sleep and actually earn more than the people working in factories and other people working in offices. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we need to ask ourselves why this topic is very heated, even in our country. It is because, Mr. Speaker, the people who have inherited continue to actually gain more without actually working, because the rate of investment of what they bequeathed is much higher than the general production of the economy. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is a wake-up call for us, even as a nation, that we need to create many production avenues so that the people who are actually being protected by this bill, by Honorable Kaluma, will not actually be following the inheritance, because they'll have the opportunities to create their own money, to create their own resources, without necessarily, Mr. Speaker, relying on those who have already gone ahead of them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Honorable Oudo Ojiambo.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to the Law of Succession Amendment Bill, Bill number 75 of 2019. I must commend Honorable Kaluma for bringing up this bill, and probably is informed by his experience and history, and that's why we always need honorable members in this House who have got some experience, history, and interest. Honorable Speaker, when the bill was published and read the first time in this House, I subjected public participation to my people of Unyula constituency. And I regret to inform the House Honorable Speaker that majority of the people of Unyula constituency whom I represent in this August House have got difficulties in accepting the contents of this bill for the simple reason that's not addressing the malady or the shortcomings on the existing bill, especially in respect of Section 29 of the Succession Act as it is today. Honorable Speaker, two issues are emerging, Honorable Speaker. And allow me, Honorable Speaker, to mention number one, when we go to clause 2, where he seeks to amend Section 3, Honorable Speaker, it has got a bit of challenges. Number one, defines a spouse as a husband or a wife or wives, recognized under the Marriage Act. Honorable Speaker, if you go to the Marriage Act, number 4 of 2014, in the same interpretation section, there is a reference to cohabiting. And allow me to read it verbatim as it is, Honorable Speaker, means to live in an arrangement in which an unmarried couple lives together in a long-term relationship that resembles a marriage. So the question people are asking, what happens to that kind of an arrangement, yet here the definition of a spouse only relates to wife, husband, or wives? It falls short of expectation. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, where I come from, a man is never considered great until there's drama on the date of his burial. For sure. Honorable Speaker, you go to the folklore, you go to the history of the community. If at the time of burial, when they start giving eulogies, they ask, is there anybody who wants to say anything? At this corner you see a woman, another corner you see a woman with the photocopy children. Then, Honorable Speaker, that burial will go down in history as an extremely wonderful burial, a successful burial. So the question is, the amendments here, Honorable Speaker, do not go to the core to address the challenges that are on the ground. Honorable Speaker, an important question that arises as well is, again, the definition of dependence. Under clause 3 of his amendment, he defines a dependent as a spouse and children of the deceased, whether or not maintained by the deceased immediately prior to his, or actually should be, to his and her death. That's an amendment we have to make. Honorable Speaker, many of us know that men can perform biological acts of reproduction up to the very last time, whichever age he is. Honorable Speaker, how do you determine the number of children you have until after 9 months after your burial? Honorable Speaker, how do you determine? That's the question people are asking. I have died today. I did an act that resulted in a pregnancy. How do you determine that these are my children until after 9 months, Honorable Speaker? So, Honorable Speaker, in any case, Honorable Speaker, you can never know. A man can never tell the number of children he has because you don't know. A man's just like when you go to plant, when you pick your seeds and scatter them. You don't know where they will grow. You don't know which one will grow and which one will not grow. So, Honorable Speaker, we request that at the committee of the whole House, we need to expand that definition.
There is a point of order from Honorable Martin.
Point of information, Mr. Speaker.
Information to who?
To him. I think he has accepted that.
No, Honorable Speaker, allow me to finish. I don't want to be informed respectively.
Well. You don't. Okay, very well. Okay. What is out of order on about Chiang? Member for Migori. That member seems not to...
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, allow me to conclude my presentation. Honorable Speaker, so those are the challenges that we must address. Honorable Speaker, secondly, or thirdly, Honorable Speaker, is clause 3B. Honorable Speaker, is too wide and is practically impossible. And I want to echo the sentiment of my party chair. Many of us as politicians, either as politicians or ordinary human beings, we support so many children. We support so many families out of philanthropy, out of generosity. We have no intentions at all of them becoming family members or fall into the description of truly a dependent. Personally, currently, since I got a job, I have paid school fees for so many children. Up to now, we remain friends. I have done so many things to less vulnerable families, and I still do it today. That is my personal decision. It's not shared by my wife. It's not shared by my children. Why should you encumber my children and my wife when I'm gone, that they must continue to support these people because they are my dependent? Honorable Speaker, we must restate this and clearly only limit to those blood relatives, and I would suggest even we expand to include mothers-in-law, fathers-in-law, and all those kind of things, because in that event, then we are so limiting in the definition. Honorable Speaker, it is something he has tried, but he needs to go further and cure the shortcomings of the particular act. Honorable Speaker, indeed, as we say, every woman, every man deserves companionship, of whichever definition, of whichever nature. Honorable Speaker, put a straitjacket who can be a participant in any form is extremely unfair. And Honorable Speaker, as I complete, we need to avoid this obsession with succession. We need to avoid this obsession with inheritance. A reasonable man, a reasonable woman, an able-bodied person should be able to work for himself and earn their own assets to live on their own, instead of hoping to depend. Honorable Speaker, even in this House, there are very many members here whose parents died and left them with nothing. It has never stopped them from succeeding in life and building their own class of assets. Honorable Speaker, that's why I want to urge all people, men, women, wherever it is, before you die or as you go along, please have a will to clearly state what will happen to your assets.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. Some of us who profess the Christian faith, Honorable Speaker, amidst imperfections of man, are at pains to reconcile this idea of seed scattering business.
What is out of order, Honorable
What is out of order, Honorable Speaker? Can the debater substantiate that he's talking for himself and not for the general public or for men? I thank you.
Honorable Speaker, the Constitution of Kenya states there is no state religion for the Republic of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, so don't pontificate about religion. I'm a practicing Catholic, but I represent the people of Samia, the people of Kenya generally. So therefore, I have a right to speak for them in respect of my own status. Personally, I have a family. My children are known. No, there's no doubt about it. There will be no drama. That's why probably I might never enter the list of great people of Samia people. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I oppose the proposed amendment until we make the necessary changes to reflect the reality on the ground. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Catherine, but Honorable Oudo, I found it a bit quite something when you said that a man would not know his children, because that's a very serious statement. But you sounded very convinced about it. Very well, Honorable Catherine, and I would like to encourage members to have their masks on. Honorable Zamba, I can tell you are putting it. Honorable Kasaru, you're putting it on. Honorable Bunyasi is going to be putting it on. Please, Honorable Catherine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a very proud woman, and Mr. Speaker, for avoidance of doubt, I'm never afraid of being called a slay queen. On behalf of the many Kenyan women here who are married as first wives, second wives, third wives, some even who do not know who the fathers of their children are, or even the public would attempt to try to interpret who fathered their children. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, allow me to congratulate the Honorable Kaluma, because he has been a champion for women, our girls and our children in the Republic of Kenya. And even recently, when we had the issues of a two-third gender rule in this parliament, Honorable Kaluma has never shied away from advocating for women's rights in this country. And therefore, I stand tall, to speak for majority of our women, particularly from where I come from in the Mount Kenya region, who are not lucky to find suitors or spouses, but they have a right to give birth. And you have a right to give birth with whoever you want, because children are a gift from God. And I want to thank our women, because we strongly stand tall, even when we are called single mothers, and we bring up our children, and even most of our children, they do better than even children who enjoy two parents in this country. And therefore, let nobody, Mr. Speaker, stand at the floor of this House to attempt to label women slave queens, and talking of women who give birth to children, and they want to assume we gave birth through osmosis. It is men who give us children, and it is men who are the fathers of our children. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I have consulted the Honorable Kaluma, seeking for clarification on a number of issues, and he is a very friendly legislator. He is working with our women, and he wants us at the Committee of the Whole, we introduce amendments in this bill. And number one amendment, as was stated by the Honorable Millie Othiambo, is that we want under clause 3, we split item 29 1A for the purpose of this part, dependent. A, to read on issues of the spouse, the children of the decedent, whether they are maintained by the deceased immediately or prior to his death. That is A. Number 2, and that is part B. That is on search of the deceased parents, full stop. We introduce part C. Part C is going to read, Honorable Kaluma, the stepchildren, the grandparents, the grandchildren, and every other person who was a beneficiary was being maintained by the said person. You know why, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this? In situations where we have large families, there are people who never work for as long as their brother or sister is a business person, or they have anything they can be proud about. And therefore, they will always sit back and praying, when will this person die, whether it's corona or what, then we get a stake of his estate. And for the protection of our husbands and wives and our children, we need to introduce an amendment, Honorable Kaluma, that it is only in the absence of part A, where the spouses and the children are, that your stepbrothers and stepsisters and your grandparents can inherit your estate. We must come out very clear that if they are going to benefit in your estate, it is to a certain percentage and at the will of the owner of the estate. But if you want to introduce an unscrupulous clause here to make your brothers in the village to be lazy, waiting for you to die, so that they throw your wife out of the window, and they declare you are not even married here legally, we are going to be passing the burden to our wives.
Very well. Honorable members, Honorable Catherine, by resolution of this House, this bill had 2 hours maximum. And I know quite a number of members are lined up here that want to speak to this. I'm afraid I'm unable to break that resolution of the House of 2 hours. In that case, and the Honorable Catherine, you still have a chance to speak in the Committee of the Whole. So in the circumstances, the Honorable members who haven't spoken to this, you may not speak to this at this time, because by the resolution of the House. And therefore, it is time for the mover to reply. Your time has been eaten a bit by the members. You are the one who was championing the members to speak. So you will have, you don't have very many minutes, Honorable Kaluma. You have actually a maximum of 6 or so.
Leave to donate.
Yeah, well, what we do, Honorable Kaluma,
yes,
so that then we are fair to your allocation as a mover.
Yes.
We shall not limit you to the 6. Let's give you the entitled 10 minutes.
Yes.
You can allocate as you wish.
Yes. Honorable Speaker, I thank you most sincerely, because mine was to set the agenda. I'm happy with the contributions coming, which can lead to improvement of the bill. May I therefore allow Honorable
Kate Waruguru, with your leave, Honorable Speaker, to have 2 minutes.
How many?
2 minutes for her to conclude, Honorable Kate. And then Honorable Martha was requesting for just 2 minutes.
Okay. Honorable Karuma, I'm advised that Honorable Kadini having spoken,
yes,
if she stands again to speak, that will be counted as second time.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, may we then allow Honorable Martha Wangari, she has
How
been
many?
engaging
How
on
many
this
minutes?
matter for only 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
And then, Honorable Speaker, we allow Honorable Pamela and Honorable Nziambi.
2 minutes each.
2 minutes each, then
Okay.
I can conclude in the last 3 or 4.
Okay, very well.
Thank you.
Honorable Kadini is consulting with Honorable Wangari. We can start with some. Okay,
Done.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and I thank the mover for being gracious to donate the 2 minutes. And I'll go straight to some of the issues that I've had with this bill. One issue, Mr. Speaker, is the making sure that this law is also aligned with Article 53 of the Constitution, the rights of the children, whether married or not. And I say that, and I'll specifically pick the issue of Christian marriage, Hindu marriage, where you have one wife by law. But if you have sowed your seed outside, that child is entitled to be a beneficiary of your estate. And I say that, Mr. Speaker, because Article 53 is very clear on the rights of the children, and specifically Part E, to parental care and protection, which includes equal responsibility of the mother and the father to provide for the child, whether they are married to each other or not. That issue, Mr. Speaker, has to come out clearly in this bill so that we do not make people suffer because you don't like the woman you slept with. My friend, use a condom. If there is a child out of it, make sure you take responsibility of that child. And I say that, Mr. Speaker, because we have to speak clearly about it. One person who died last year, I think, called Ken Walibora, who was a very prolific writer. Those of us who did fasihi in school, and I have talked about it before, said very clearly, hakuna mtoto wa haramu, kitendo ndicho cha haramu. Yes.
Very good. Honorable Pamela Odhiambo, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance, and thank you, Honorable Kaluma, for thinking about the issues that we go through when somebody dies, especially the men. I think I just wanted to reemphasize the bit that Waruguru raised up that says that Section B of this amendment and the proposed to introduce Section C should only take place in the event that we don't have a wife or wives and the children. And then I just want to challenge my dear debater here, Honorable Undo. It is shameful that you can stand in the honorable house of this caliber to say that men give birth carelessly all over the place, even with animals, without knowing who their children are. We demand as women that wherever you give birth, you should keep it on record and take care of that child, because we are tired of these children we are calling fatherless when their fathers are well and kicking. It is high time that men take responsibility and do that which is right. Otherwise, all the women deserve to be respected. And Kaluma, you'll note, Honorable Kaluma, you'll note the insertion of the words her, because sometimes it is me who dies. And so it is not just his. I think that is a small error, but we can correct it. Otherwise, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We stand to protect the women, we stand to protect the men and the children. Thank you.
Honorable Engineer in Zambia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very brief because of time. As I rise to support this bill by one Honorable Kaluma, and I appreciate him for donating at least 1 or 2 minutes. I want to be just very clear, and to make it very clear that we need to protect our women. In this case, where a man is married to a woman, and after they stay after some time, and we have very hardworking women who even know how to create their own wealth, and a man now decides to marry another woman or wives. In this case, the bill should protect the wealth of this hardworking woman who was married initially, in case this man dies, that wealth which has been acquired by the first woman should be protected. And I rise again to encourage our Kenyans to work hard and not to wait for somebody to die to inherit whatever is available. Thank you. And the men should also come up to be very responsible, and the women at the same time. Asante.
Honorable Kaluma, you have the balance of the time.
Yeah, I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me thank the members who have contributed. I know, and you can note, Honorable Speaker, several members still require time to debate. Colleagues, I'm told there are only a few minutes remaining. Let us engage more so at the committee stage of the bill. Honorable members, I brought this bill, but I'm not saying that it must be passed in its form. Throughout your presentations, I've noted very many issues we can bring on board. Some members have suggested that we need to break down subparagraph B, so that you say those others in the absence of, your spouse, your surviving spouse, your children, your parents, so that we stagger them with clarity. It may look very broad, but you've also heard of cases where there is an accident, for instance, involving a family, including extended family. But I think the wisdom that you are suggesting, most Honorable Ketu Waruguru, that we structure them, is something we can take. And if we don't improve it, as a member, you can bring amendments, which I can assure you I will support. Honorable Speaker, I'm enriched by what Honorable Martha Wangari has said. Some people think that when we just say children, we are not alive to all children. And we are talking about the children. Go and look at what Article 53 of the Constitution says. When I'm talking about a spouse under the Marriage Act, go and look at what the Marriage Act says. It is very widely defined there. When you are bothered about property and former wife and whether they can inherit, go and look at the Matrimonial Properties Act, and you'll see how it is treated even in a polygamous situations. People do not know, Honorable Speaker, that when you are in a polygamous setup and then you marry another wife, the property you have with the first wife up to the time you are marrying can only be shared between you and your first wife. So you start anew that way. So these things are already broken down. Honorable members, I'm bringing this bill out of my experience, partly as a lawyer and partly from what I've seen. I told you when I moved the bill that I was involved a bit in the Abros Adeas estate. I didn't tell you that I also intervened in the matter for Honorable Melitas Mugabe Were, if you can remember, where a person who was among the best mates, and you can see the photos, comes upon his death to say now she's a wife for purposes of succession. And by the time we were successful to get the family back, Honorable Nangabo, whom I knew through that case, will tell you, honorable members, that lady had taken the flats of Melitas Mugabe Were, and the mother of Were was suffering. His siblings were suffering. So I'm not suggesting that this is final. I request you to support this bill. We go through second reading so that we can bring clarity. People have spoken to what the Islamic law of inheritance says. And by the way, if you look at the Quran, it is so clear, so crisp. That's why for our Islamic brothers, you never see it. This is what I'm requesting we think about, so that it is certain when any of us dies, any Kenyan, how we will proceed. I beg to move, and I thank you, Mr. Speaker, as I respond.
Reply.
And pray we move.
To reply.
I thank you.
To reply.
I beg to reply. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable members, we shall pay putting the question on that order to a subsequent time. Next order.
Order number 13, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 19 of 2019, second reading.
Honorable members, the debate on this had actually commenced. The mover had done her part. The one who was on the floor was Honorable Mishi, who is seconding. And Honorable Mishi, you have a balance of 5 minutes, starting now.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it's just a continuation of where I was seconding the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 75 of 2019. Honorable Speaker, I just want to wrap up the reason why we are doing amendment in this bill, Honorable Speaker. And the main aim is to ensure we have a well-qualified members who are going to be nominated, and especially after the results of the general election, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in most of the scenarios, you can see resourceful and strong members have lost during the general election, Honorable Speaker. And when you do the nomination after the results, this is the right moment where you are going to be able to know those strong members who are resourceful, who can be reconsidered through nomination, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if we want to have well-qualified members through nomination, we need to do it after the election, because this is the time where the temperatures of the elections are down. We can have a sober process where we'll have a qualified people also who are going to represent the balance in terms of affirmative groups. Because, Honorable Speaker, you know, in the Constitution, there is what we call representation of the people, where we need to ensure that we have women in the leadership, we have youth in the leadership, we have people with disability in the leadership. Also, we have representation of the minority, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if you do it before elections, maybe you will not be able to balance all this affirmative group. But if you do it afterwards, you are going to be able to make a correct decision, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, also we need to understand, we need to have a regional balance in terms of leadership position. So after the results, you also be able to know which area in our country or which region in our country, maybe they lack some representation in terms maybe of women, in terms maybe of people with disability, or the youth, Honorable Speaker. So if we do it afterwards, we'll be able to know where are we going to give some nomination to ensure that at least we have a regional balance in terms of people representation, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, also if you do it after election, you will ensure those people who are going to be nominated are the real qualified people, people who have worked for the party, people who have been loyal for the party for that entire period, and even after, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, I don't want to talk much because the mover of this bill, Honorable Florence, has talked a lot of reason why we are putting up this kind of amendment. I also added a lot in regard to this. And I also want to urge the members that this one will not affect the issue of the BBI, because even in the BBI, there is what we call about top list. And top list is just moreover the same as nomination of members after the election. So this one, I don't think whether will interfere with what it is being talked in the BBI. Honorable Speaker, I beg to second this amendment bill by Honorable Florence Mutua, and I also appreciate her for coming up with such bill, because this is the only way we'll ensure that the right, qualified, resourceful people who did not make maybe in the general election will also come to this parliament, and they will also add value to this parliament, and they will also be in the leadership to ensure that we make so many changes in terms of law and even spearhead the development of this country. I beg to second, Honorable Speaker.
Order. Honorable members, I will propose a question, which is that the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 19 of 2019, be now read a second time. Honorable Oduol Obaka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I had requested to speak on the bill of Kaluma's bill, but still, this is very important. I think the bill that Mheshimiwa Florence Mutua has raised is still very important. It is an amendment that will help many, many people who want to come to Parliament and are part of the party but do not have good opportunity. Because I have not read it very well and have not prepared myself, I wish to be given a chance immediately. I sit down. Just give me about 10 minutes. But I think if that is possible, I'll appreciate. Otherwise, I think I support that bill, the little that I've had, and would wish to be given an opportunity to contribute properly. Thank you.
Honorable Tuwei.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. I join hands with my colleagues, especially on the matter before us, that we want to have ladies or actually members of parliament drawn from that list that we find through the party and also participation be very important and have them here. It is good for us to join our lady members of parliament in this view, especially to satisfy the concerns that we have in our constitution, because we know as we go debating the issue of PPI, the issue of getting ladies members of parliament here will be very critical. And I'm very happy to thank my colleagues who have actually brought this bill before us, so that we can be able to contribute and also lay a foundation for tomorrow in order for us to have a step in the right direction in trying to ensure equity and also representation in this house that was envisaged by those who actually came up with this noble constitution of ours, that we must have all genders and representation in this house. Mr. Speaker, ladies or actually women representation is very critical, and they form a very, very, very important sector in our population. We have 51% of Kenyans being women, and to me, a bill of this nature will enrich and enhance the responsibility and also ways and means of us achieving what has been running away from many of the past leadership in trying to get women to this house. I do support.
Very well, honorable members, this order, this business, will have a bit of time for it when it's next scheduled by the House Business Committee. So members will have an opportunity to engage and contribute on this. I would like to encourage members to go get the bill, obviously from the place we pick, so then they can familiarize themselves on the contents of this bill in readiness for when next it is scheduled. Honorable members, the time being 1 p.m., this House stands adjourned until today, 25th March 2021 at 2:30 p.m.